Good morning. Wow, what a great privilege it is to be here on this stage at the ECR. It's been 31 years since my first ECR meeting. I came during my last year of training at Stanford University to share some of our very early work with spiral CT angiography. And it was shortly after coming to that meeting that I returned home to my university, Stanford at the time, in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we began working with a company called Silicon Graphics. And Silicon Graphics was a very important computer company in the 1990s. They developed the computers that did a lot of the animation for Hollywood, like the Terminator movie, if you know that one. And we were very fortunate to be close by and to have a partnership. And with the introduction of spiral CT and the availability of volumetric data from the CT scanner, we sought to take the visualization to the next level, to perform immersive visualization, to enter into the data set using volume rendering, which was very new at the time, and consequently to produce a fly-through such as this one of the bronchi. And although it took a day and a half to render this movie, I was very proud and very excited by this innovation, at least what I thought was an innovation. And so at our pulmonary medicine conference at Stanford, which we had once a month, and there were maybe 70 senior professors and trainees there, I asked the leader if I could show this video so that people could see the work that we were doing. And he said, yes, of course. So I played the video, and I went and I counted through the divisions of the bronchi as we flew through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 generations. And after showing the video, he stood up and he looked at me and he said, I'm trying to decide if I should kill you now. I was shocked. I sat down in my seat next to one of the senior radiology professors, a European gentleman named Paul Stark, and he elbowed me in the ribs and he said, "Enfant terrible. You are enfant terrible." Not what I expected from innovation. Just a short while thereafter, I was invited back to Europe for the Carvat celebration in Rome. Professor Plinio Rossi invited me to come, and I wanted to share more of our visualization work. And at that time, we were also looking at immersive visualization of the colon, and we were modeling fly through the colon like projections through a sphere, like you see here, this gnomic projection, which we were flying through. But we also experimented with cylindrical projections. This is a representation of the surface of the sphere, a Mercator projection. And here you can see the video representation that I showed around 1995. And after showing this at the meeting, a very senior professor, a radiology professor from Italy, came up to me and he shook my hand. He said, "You helped me dream." And this gave me such a warm feeling inside. And it was fascinating to reflect on the very different impressions from this innovation that I heard from our pulmonary leader and from this radiologist. But at the time, I was really invested and fascinated by the idea of immersive visualization, and that led us to write this manuscript, Volumetric Analysis of Volume Data, Achieving a Paradigm Shift. And in this editorial, we talk about the idea of volumetric data freeing us completely from the cross-sections that are oriented to the table on which the patient lies, the CT table, and has nothing to do with the anatomic planes that are central to the internal coordinate system of the body. We wrote that stacks of cross-sectional reconstructions may be replaced by interactive exploration of imaging data volumes in a manner analogous to a sonographer's probe. And thinking that we were seeing the future, it's fascinating here in the year 2024 to look back and to reflect on the fact that much of what we thought was going to happen just didn't happen. And why is that? Why is it that an invention that seems so exciting, that seems like such an advance, doesn't become the standard of practice. This is an intravenous digital subtraction angiographic examination from 1950. You can see the hypertonicity of the contrast agent in the syringe because the blood is floating on top of the contrast material. And this patient laying against the plate to have a capture of their thoracic aorta. From the 1950s till 1990, and here is the DSA image from 1990 of the thoracic aorta. IV DSA was mostly maligned as a very poor imaging technique. The quality of the image was blurry and the detail wasn't present. Yet 1 year later, with the introduction of spiral CT, IV DSA became this. And then shortly thereafter, with the advancements in volumetric imaging and the advancements of spiral CT and the introduction of multi-detector or multi-slice CT, as mentioned by Professor Catalano, we were able to expand our applications to the entirety of the body and to suddenly make the innovation of 1950 of intravenous digital subtraction angiography to finally be an innovation in the 1990s. It took 40 years. And the images that we see today are truly astounding through the availability of this innovation. In fact, in our world, we see new and novel innovations all the time. Are there any bowlers in the audience? Doesn't seem very fair anymore, does it? You know, with an advancement like this, you know, who can miss? The reality is that this is not real. This is an AI-generated robot that is creating this video, and this is actually impossible. It is not possible to make this machine. That has been shown through a very detailed physics analysis to have the ball follow this trajectory. So it is very important for us to be alert and careful to all of the inventions that are presented to us to determine whether or not they are worth our effort in bringing them forward with the hopes that they become true innovation. And our history in radiology is replete with examples of technologies, of inventions that were so inspiring, that led us to believe that we were transforming the field of radiology with very novel tools. MR spectroscopy, coronary MR angiography, techniques where I know people who spent essentially their entire career developing these. But how many of these exams do you perform on a regular basis? I suspect 0. These are examples of inventions that did not achieve innovation. And so the question is what does it take? How do we achieve innovation in radiology? And let's start with the very classic publication by Freibach and Thornbury, Medical Decision Making, 1991, where they defined the levels of clinical efficacy and establishing the ladder that must be climbed in order to demonstrate the clinical utility and value of a diagnostic test. So often we're enamored by the technology and we only stop at level 1 or level 2. But as we descend this scale and as we establish greater levels of efficacy and utility, we have a greater chance of achieving liftoff, of achieving innovation. But even if we reach level 6, that is not necessarily sufficient because there are many other factors for us to consider. Non-clinical factors. Let's first talk about the broader external market forces. The forces that affect industry in bringing forward innovation. These are Porter's classic 6 forces. Michael Porter, a professor at the Harvard Business School, developed these about 20 years ago, and they're taught in strategy classes in business schools all over the world. They very succinctly describe the challenges that are faced by introducing new technologies and keeping those technologies at the forefront in the marketplace. But that's not all. We have to look into our organizations, our internal capabilities and competencies. Do we have the infrastructure to implement a new technology? Are there competing diagnostic tests? Think about my good friend, the pulmonologist, who wanted to kill me after I showed him the virtual bronchoscopy because he foresaw the possibility of the end of fiber optic bronchoscopy. A silly notion, of course, because of the inability of a virtual bronchoscopy to sample tissue, but nevertheless, this was his sense in the moment. And competition is very real in the clinical space. Funding, we all understand that. Expertise. We, as radiologists, as scientists, physicians in general, invest so much in developing the expertise that we have, in using the tools that we have. As new innovations come forward, as new inventions come forward, they can either be competency enhancing or competency destroying. And imagine somebody who is an expert at reading intravenous pyelograms, and then suddenly CT comes along, and there's no more IVPs. That is a competency destroying event. And so if we are not prepared as an organization to help the experts amongst us to transition, to be able to move from a moment of competence destruction to one of enhancement, then our opportunity for innovation can fail. Trust in new technology is fundamental, and there are many reasons why trust might not be immediately present. We must create trust, and we must overcome the inertia of our organizations, and even after we do all that, we must be sure that the broader economic conditions, the government, the insurance companies, the payers, have created an environment where a new technology can come forward and result in true innovation. It is important to recognize that innovation has two key components. It is invention, yes, but it is also adoption. Without adoption, innovation doesn't exist. There is a famous quote attributed to Thomas Edison that innovation without implementation is hallucination. Whether he actually said this or not is a matter of debate, but it's often quoted. And there is real validity to this consideration. And I think it's interesting to reflect in radiology on the fact that technology is the primary supplier of invention, but it is talent. It is human talent that is the engine of adoption. I want to focus in now on the present day and on technologies that are most exciting to us and so central in this meeting, and that is specifically artificial intelligence and the idea of artificial intelligence coming into the reading room to help us interpret medical imaging exams. Technology in the form of AI provides unique value in that it is inexhaustible. It can run all day long, analyze huge data sets without needing a break. It is potentially reproducible. Not always reproducible, but it should be, in many cases, reproducible. It is excellent at rote tasks, identifying all the lung nodules, segmenting them, measuring them, putting characteristics, writing them in a text-based onto a report, things that is near drudgery for some radiologists, and a real potential value-creating opportunity. Compiling the information and recording it. These are the benefits and the hope that AI potentially has to bring to us in the reading room. But it's important to recognize that talent brings unique value too. It takes the talent, the human expertise, to validate the AI results, to make sure that although AI is principally operating very effectively in the middle of the bell curve, that when we're at the edges of the bell curves, when there is certain conditions that are out of the ordinary, that we can bring our experience, our ability to reason through very specific clinical conditions to augment the AI, to provide context when new information comes through, and to communicate. Communicate not in the form of just a written report, but communicate in terms of describing the value proposition, taking the technology through the stages of adoption that I was describing, to be persuasive, to follow the political arguments, to be representative with advocacy in the government. This type of communication is fundamental to achieving innovation that is adopted and building of trust. There's no machine that is going to generate trust on its own. It's the talent that is going to bring that trust. This is a particular moment in time for us, worldwide, challenging us in the field of radiology. The complexity of the imaging data that we are interpreting is rising on an annual basis. Moreover, not only are the data sets denser and more information rich, but the demand just continues to go up. 5 to 6% compounded annual growth rate since 2010 of CT and MR. These are data compiled for all European nations. Do you think that we are training 5 to 6% more radiologists every year? 5 to 6 more than over and above those who are retiring? I dare say no, we aren't right now. And that is the pressure that many of us are feeling in the reading rooms. We need to somehow figure out how to accommodate this incredible demand for the powerful tool of medical imaging, of radiology. And so that is why we're turning with hope to these new technologies to find new ways to interpret the information more effectively. And so when we think about the opportunities available to us, we need to think from multiple perspectives. We'll get to AI, but let's also think about the talent. How does talent rise above the individual? By being a team. And by developing teams where there is specialization, where there are defined roles, it is possible for everybody to play to their greatest strengths, to operate at the top of their license, to not spend time doing things that are not bringing the value that can be brought from the training that those individuals have. Recently in our department, we were fortunate to add a group of 6 radiology assistants who are support staff operating 24/7 to handle all the incoming phone calls from our reading rooms, all the outgoing calls, following up findings. If a conversation needs to occur with a referring physician, they connect us. And this has been a great boon to our practice, to be able to reduce the time that our radiologists are spent trying to get people on the phone and trying to connect and allowing them to spend more time on the cases. That's just one example of bringing together a team and differentiation. I want to share with you this story of Faisal Sami, who is a radiologist with Chicago Radiology, and he operates with 6 scribes. And these scribes all in turn pick separate cases that he has on their work list. They tee it up on a special PACS where they concatenate all the images across the cross-sectional acquisition so that it's one very long series. They compile all the clinical data, and he sits there and I don't know if you saw the table of 12 mice, computer mice that he has, and all of these are the separate 6 PACS stations, and he goes from one to the other and he calls out the findings, and they take it down and they compile a report for him to sign. He reads 400 cross-sectional studies every 8 hours, which is a remarkable achievement. This is a model that he is extending and expanding to others. And I think the question here is whether or not Dr. Sami will ultimately use AI, or whether he'll find a proper balance between the use of AI and these scribes. So where do we find our teammates? Are they out there waiting for us? Perhaps, but I think we also need to recognize that we need to invest in training them. And I'm very proud to mention the fact that at the University of Arizona, we have established the first Bachelor of Science in Medicine program in the United States. Now, I know that post-secondary school education is structured differently here in most of Europe, but in the United States, at the age of 18, students first attend college for 4 years of undergraduate education, and then consider whether to go on to graduate school, such as medical school. In this program, where we have 1,000 students signed up for the major already, we are teaching 20-year-olds and 21-year-olds about medicine. And our department of medical imaging is teaching this course, Diagnostic Technologies in Healthcare. The objectives of the course: understanding diagnostic imaging modalities and testing methods, discover the process of diagnosing disease and guiding therapeutic decisions, obtain overview of how medical specialties depend on diagnostic technologies, evaluation methods, errors in diagnosis, methods for mitigation, understanding the role of AI in image reconstruction and decision-making, and understanding emerging diagnostic technologies, wearables, remote monitoring. We will teach omics and provide a full scope and entree into careers in diagnostics. It's a great privilege to think about us in radiology being able to present this and to hopefully begin to inspire the workforce of the future. The further back we can reach into the training of these students, the better chance we have to build the teams that we need moving forward. I want to focus on another aspect of the team, on the radiologist, and recognize that at the end of the day, there is only so much that we can handle. And part of the way that we can consider what is within the realm of what we can handle is to think about it in terms of cognitive load. Here you see a warehouse, and the heavier the box, the harder it is to do the work. Heavy studies, data-rich studies, require more effort. If technology is going to help us in the reading room, then it must reduce the load. It is remarkable how AI algorithms can generate quantitative tabulature of all kinds of metrics, in this case, tumor metrics. And when presented with this, it seems that it is unquestionably a value add to be able to put this information into our report. But we have to be sensitive to the fact that what added cognitive load does this bring? What does the radiologist need to do in seeing this in order to validate it and then assure that they are confident in it being in the report? We must see the design of AI solutions in a manner that help to reduce, not increase, cognitive load. These are two papers that have been published just in the last couple of months, one from Radiology Artificial Intelligence, the other from JAMA, both articulating the ways in which artificial intelligence must depend on human intelligence in order to bring clinical value. The first one relating to saliency maps, which is a visual representation of the AI black box determination, essentially a way to communicate the confidence that AI has in its observations, and establishing that oftentimes these saliency maps are inconsistent with AI predictions. The second study, focusing on large language models as a basis for aggregating electronic health records to create a summary for the radiologist or for any physician to be able to have context around a patient's rich medical history, and establishing the fact that LLMs generate summaries that can be unpredictable and can have unpredictable effects on clinical decision making. Our role remains one of being the arbiter of truth And we need to recognize where the strengths of AI are and where are its potential weaknesses. We also have to understand where are our strengths and our weaknesses. As humans, we bring our own individual perceptual toolkits. This is an eye tracking study that is looking and tracking the foveal gaze of a reader through transverse CT sections, looking to see when they detect the nodules in red. And the path that this radiologist takes is not going to be the path that the next radiologist takes. It's probably not going to be the path that this radiologist takes the next time through. But the way that radiologists observe and learn and do the work that they do is important to understand. We see tremendous variation from expert to expert in their approach. The driller approach, people who focus on a single area in the transverse domain and go through in a cranial caudal direction before shifting to another direction. This is considered drilling. As opposed to the scanner, who starts at the top and scans the image and then goes down and scans it again. Different approaches completely. In fact, we've done a fair amount of investigation at the variation that we see amongst the experts, amongst talent, and there is quite a bit of difference in the amount of time people spend searching, in the pattern that they use, in the need that they have for an observation to reach their central gaze. Some people are able to detect abnormalities with their peripheral gaze and to then foveate, to then converge on the object. Others require it on the central side. Even the nature of what types of background are distractors. And so we have an opportunity with technology to better customize and present information in a way that is dedicated toward helping our talent and experts operate as effectively as they can. What you see in this image are circumscribed regions that are a little darker. These are the regions that were seen by the reader the first time they went through the data set. And now we're presenting it to them again, so they can focus on the other regions that they didn't look at and see if they can detect more abnormalities. When we really expand the possibility of trying to present images in a way that will maximize our ability to make the necessary observations, we should also think about the fact that standard spatial maps may not be the exclusive way that we want to look at the data. This is a map of the 2020 US presidential election. Red are the counties that went for Trump. Blue are the counties that went for Biden. And this is a map based upon geographic size. This is a voter cartogram that is based on voter density or population size. And what you can see is the areas with less dense population are condensed, and the areas with greater population are expanded. Imagine using a similar approach where the criteria is AI confidence, or the definition of AI suspecting normal versus abnormal regions, to be able to accentuate the areas that require human expertise and focus and diminishing the areas of normality. When I start to think about these types of visualizations, I can't help but go all the way back and think about the tools that I used early in my training. The film alternator, which provided a vast array of space for us to lay out images and look at them across time and to be able to take in a large volume of data. It was this type of display that inspired us to think about potential futures of rooms of display like this. And in fact, in 2006, it led us at Stanford to develop this application here, where you see me, almost 20 years ago, selecting cross-sections from this data set and then being able to go and to interact with the data, resizing it, and using it as a novel and a different way to evaluate the images. All of this is a possibility that we have thought about and dreamed of for years. And yet, this was what we were reading on in 2009. This is what we're reading on in 2024. And if we're not careful, this is what we're going to be reading on in 2030. It's a limited display area, limited protocol customization. It's immobile. It sits in one place. It's expensive to buy all of these monitors. And the control devices, the mouse and the keyboard, are designed for text. I'm sure some of you are aware that a company named after a fruit introduced this tool in the last month. This tool, which provides for immersive visualization, for a high spatial resolution in the foveated region, for gaze tracking simultaneously, has the potential to transform the reading environment that we might use in the future. And we might even find Amica in there as well. Just last week at the Society of Thoracic Radiology, one of our residents, Jason Lee, who is seen here next to me, provided the preliminary data using a different goggle set, a visualization set, where he and his team coded up a virtual reading room. And you see me here in that virtual reading room, controlling it. I have 3 screens, and I'm reading CTPE studies in there. The fact is that what you can do within this environment is absolutely unlimited. You can have a whole row of view boxes if you want. Or you can create an environment that is incredibly flexible. Just imagine having an infinite spectrum of space on which to display images, to be able to scroll in time every chest radiograph, every skeletal film, whatever it is, across time, to be able to take your hand and move through the data, to translate in space, to translate through contrast mechanism. Perhaps up here in your virtual space, you store the primary articles that you refer to with normograms. Perhaps you have another area for teaching files that you pull down. And as you're reading a case, if there are key images, you just flick them off into the corner and collect them there. And of course, you're not in there alone. You know, your colleagues can meet you there. You can have conference. You can show each other cases. The resident can be there. And oh yes, of course, AI in there to help as well. If this type of immersive technology is implemented effectively, there is the possibility of radiologists expanding their scope, becoming true informatologists, aggregating additional data in order to be the primary deliverer of information. But in order to get to this point, it's going to require quite a bit of development, of technical development, as well as human talent for adoption. But who knows? Perhaps this might be our reading room of the future. I'd like to offer just a few parting thoughts. The idea of transformation in radiology is not new. Although this feels like an incredible moment in time where we're seeing unprecedented technology and unprecedented need, I can tell you that there were other times in our history where the same feeling was there, and we had incredibly transformative technology as well. We are in an incredibly dynamic field, and radiology's transformation is 130 years young and still going strong. Remember that innovation begins with invention, but without consideration of the clinical value, the value to the patient, the value to the referrer, the value to the hospital, to the health system, without consideration of human factors, of societal dynamics, of economic conditions, implementation and adoption will be unrealized. And finally, radiology's advancement depends upon a strategic focus on developing the unquestionably interdependent resources of technology and talent. I hope that I've helped you to dream. Thank you.